Well, hey, man, it's great to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today.
Ah, my pleasure. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so, I would imagine being in the world of audiobooks, everything exploded during the pandemic. Podcasting, audiobooks. So I'm curious, how much of getting through the pandemic affected the way that you do business? How many ripples are still a part of your world now that came from that time period?
Well, I know a lot of authors probably did a lot of writing during the pandemic.
Yeah,
So there are many authors out there that have now published books that, it's time to turn that into an audiobook. And I have like a million catchphrases. And I always say that, all nonfiction authors need to narrate their own audiobook. And, the reason being is it's their story. No
yeah,
one can express their story better than them.
yeah,
Even another narrator who can do fantastic work, but it's still the narrator's interpretation as opposed to the author. So the author may not express a certain concept or say things in a certain way that maybe the narrator did, and they're like, well, maybe I wouldn't say it that way. So it is really important for the author to narrate their own audiobook. But yeah, it's the audiobook world's been growing and expanding and just continues to grow and expand. So
yeah.
it's a great thing for authors to be in.
I love it. I mean, I actually I take things in more auditorily than ever, and I read really slow. So audiobooks has been an absolute godsend. I totally love it. And I always really do like it when the author reads it. Like I recently listened to a book by Miranda July, and the way that she does the narration is hysterical. She's so good at it. But I always find that the personal touch from the author always has a different tinge to me.
Absolutely. And it's all part of the author brand. When an author writes a book and they publish a book and it's out there in the world, whether they wrote it, maybe they wrote it as a writer and that's what they do for a profession, or maybe they wrote it, nights and weekends because they have a day job. As far as I'm concerned, if you published your book, you are an entrepreneur. So
Yeah.
welcome to entrepreneurship. Your authorship, your author brand, that's who you are. That's everything about you of who you are. And so your product, of course, is your ebook, your paperback, your hardcover, and especially your audiobook. And to preserve the integrity of your author brand, it only makes sense that you narrate your own audiobook because
Yeah.
it's in your own voice. And that really it actually lets you stand out more in a crowd because of your uniqueness. Very
Yeah.
important.
Absolutely. So you're an audiobook coach, you're a producer, you're a speaker. There's a lot that's going on when you look on paper. But if I was to get this boiled down to something that a third grader could understand, it's career day, you're in front of the kids, and one of the kids in the room is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
I would just say I help nonfiction authors turn their book into an audiobook that they narrate, and I help them every step of the way, from recording to how to do a great narration to getting them published on
Yeah.
Audible, Amazon, and Apple.
So let me ask you this. What did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream?
Oh, wow. You're making me think back way back. Third grade. Well, I think one of the first things I wanted to be was a fireman. However, when I started to play guitar, rock star, of
Yeah.
course.
Oh, yeah. So I got to know, what was the first concert that you ever saw in your life that blew you away?
My very first concert was seeing Gary Newman
Wow.
at the Santa Monica Civic Center in Santa Monica, California.
Wow.
It was my first concert. But I've seen, obviously a million other concerts
Yeah.
as well. And I know that, your show is jazz based,
It's the other part. Yeah, this is kind of the zygote split, but yeah, jazz is kind of a big part of what I do.
which is super super cool because I started working in the entertainment business 30 plus years ago, and that's my background. I started off in radio,
Yeah.
and I was on the production side, but I also hosted talk shows and music shows, and I did host for about 5 years. I hosted a radio show called Jazz Notes,
Nice.
and so luckily I had the opportunity to be able to interview just a lot of great jazz artists. One of my favorites was Horace Silver.
Yeah.
He actually was doing a radio show that I was engineering for him at the
Wow.
station. we just became good friends. And then it's like, well, I got to have you on my show
Yeah.
now.
That's wonderful. Jazz musicians are some of the finest creatures on the planet. They are the most, and the higher up you go, the more humble they are, and they all want to help each other out. They want to keep that torch going bright. They just embody all of the things that were imbued in kindergarten to hold on to and let it shine throughout our lives. They've figured it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I was doing the jazz show, the what do you call this? Los Angeles Jazz Society is a nonprofit organization to promote jazz, as they rightfully claim as America's national treasure, because it is.
Yeah,
100%.
yeah,
And so I got involved, with them and their events, and which opened the door to meeting a lot of great people. And so I was bringing in John Hendricks from Lambert Hendricks and Ross
yeah.
came in and did an interview. Henry Mancini, I went to his office in Beverly
Oh,
Hills and
that's
interviewed
cool.
him. And which was great. And that was probably about a year before he passed away. So I was really fortunate to be able
Yeah.
to get that. But
Wow.
again, some of the other artists that are no longer with us. Great guitar player John Collins, who
Yep.
played, with Roy Eldridge back
Yep.
in the day, with Nat King Cole. He played with Billie Holiday. Just getting these experiences and hearing these stories were just fantastic. Other people like Harry Sweets Edison,
Yeah.
uh, um, Mike Garson.
Uh-huh.
Who else? Bob Cooper, great sax player. Bob Cooper,
Yeah.
Conti Candoli, like all the guys that were on the
Wow.
Tonight Show band. I would
Yeah.
bring them in to interview them.
That's awesome. And I love that West Coast cool jazz vibe. It was like kind of the offshoot of the birth of cool. It's like all of those
Right.
guys you mentioned just kind of took that and just kind of molded it into that West Coast art form. I love it. So how did this happen? Take me back to your childhood, where you were born and raised, and how did these seeds of getting into radio and audiobooks and helping people along those lines, how did that happen?
Yeah. It's funny when I first started to play guitar. I was 13, I think, at
Yeah,
the time. I studied at the Southern California Conservatory of Music, and uh, my training was traditional and contemporary jazz. Now, I'm a 13-year-old kid.
yeah,
That's not what I want to do. I want to be
yeah.
a rock star.
Uh-huh.
What is this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I went through it, and then I changed instructors. I want the rock guy. So I studied with him for 1/4 of the program, and I went back to jazz
Yeah. Yeah.
because I realized that I wasn't learning anything that was so profound or just really moved music forward for me. And I realized that the depth of what jazz is, chordal structures and that kind of thing. But here's the funny thing, Joe, is I'm probably the worst improviser on the planet. That is my biggest weakness. My brain is so methodical.
Yeah.
Like I have to work my solos out. So when it came to improvising, like I can never do the George Benson thing.
Yeah.
I just
Uh-huh.
couldn't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what was the first book that you read when you were a kid that really opened the door up to reading and just that world of wonder?
Um, as a kid, because they had the scholastic book clubs that you
Yeah.
can order books from. The Gizmo from Outer Space was a
Yeah.
great book.
Yeah.
Runaway Ralph is another classic.
Yeah.
Those were always fun books to read. Um, yeah, those are probably the first books.
Yeah. So, talk to me a little bit about inspirations or heroes. Who's been kind of that motivator for you in your career?
From a musical standpoint, um, it would probably, well, Gary Newman was an actual influence for me. It wasn't just a lot of people know the song Cars,
Yeah.
but his catalog and what he brought to the music industry at that time. He really was the guy
Yeah.
who brought synthesizers into pop music.
Yeah.
uh, you know his albums came out in 78, 79.
Yeah.
before the whole 80s thing took off.
Yeah.
So, he really was a pioneer. Um, but, I mean, from a rock standpoint, was influenced by Rush, by Pink Floyd. My musical style is very, uh, you know, Floydish, cinematic, that kind of thing. But in high school, I was introduced to the world of jazz fusion, and
Yeah.
which I had no clue about. And my sister, one of her friends, gave me a cassette tape, and one side was Jean Lupani live, and the other side was Al Di Meola, Elegant Gypsy album,
Yeah.
which I, had no idea about who these people were, their artists or anything. Heard Jean Lupani, completely blew me away. When I first heard it, I didn't even know it was violin.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I thought it was a guy on a synth,
Yep.
because of the way he processed the violin, but it just blew me away. I never heard anything like that before.
Yeah.
And then I found out that he was going to be in concert. So, back in the day, I wasn't able to drive yet, so I took the bus to Tower Records because that's where you got your tickets back
Uh-huh.
in, before Ticketmaster, right?
Yeah.
And bought tickets the day before the event, and got fantastic seats, like 20, 30 rows back, center, right there. And this was back in 1981. I mean, it was a long
Yeah.
time ago,
Sure.
but it was a fantastic concert. And here's the funny thing, as a musician, I eventually did my own thing in my own band and all that. And I have a group called, or my alter ego is called Lane's Lair. And I released a couple of albums with that band. But on my second album, I had Rayford Griffin as my drummer, as my session drummer for the album. Rayford Griffin was the drummer with Jean-Luc Ponty when I saw him in 1981.
Wow.
And it was like this full circle thing to be able to see him play as a kid. And then, you know, just the experience. I mean, and I was a fan,
Yeah.
and I was able to get him to play on the album. So, we're in rehearsal, and I'm like, you got to be very professional. But I said, I just have to say, I'm the biggest fan. And I just went off on that. And then after I did that, I was like, okay, come on, guys, back to work.
Right. That's awesome. So I'm curious, when did you segue from, being in the media and entertainment industry into audiobooks? What was that transition? What made you do that?
So, my last 14 or so years, I worked at 20th Century Fox on the studio lot in Los Angeles as feature project manager. So it was more of a a corporate job.
Yeah.
Um, Disney Disney bought Fox. That was the big deal that happened a few years ago.
Yeah.
So we're all waiting to see what's going to happen. Well, Disney came in. They came into the department that I worked in and just decimated it. So I was on the first round of firings. And so, which is okay because blessing in disguise. So I realized, well, it's time to reinvent myself and what I want to do with my life and my career. I knew I did not want to go back to the corporate world, so that was a given. And I, was always driven to help people, and I wanted to do something that I felt would have more purpose, and for people and for myself. So I started Robert Lane Coaching first as a career coach slash life coach, and took my experiences of working, all these years in the business,
Yeah.
but be able to help anybody in any business navigate through any kind of work environment. So that was my goal.
Yeah.
So that led to me writing a book because people were asking me, "Oh, you've worked all these years in the entertainment business. You must have a lot of stories." And it's like, well, I guess I kind of do. So I decided, all right, I'm going to write a book, but I just don't want to write just a memoir. I want to make it valuable. So with each story that I wrote in the book, I tied a life lesson, a concept, a technique, something that people can learn from, and get value out of it than just only a story. So I applied a lot of the career coaching and life coaching aspects to that. So after I published my book, and of course, being an audio guy, you got to turn it into an audiobook. So I did. And then I had other authors approaching me, saying, "Hey, how did you do the audiobook? I really would love to know how, can you help me with that? So I expanded my business to create an audiobook coaching program, which is called Your Book, Your Voice. And it's a 6-week program where I help the authors set up their own recording space, teach them the fine art of how to do a great, compelling narration, and then do all the editing because you have to edit their files. They have to sound good and they have to meet the exact specifications for publication or it will get rejected. And then I do all the uploading for them. So my goal is just worry about doing a great narration. Let me do the heavy lifting for you.
Yeah.
And I even provide them with professional equipment for their recording space, which is theirs to keep. It's part of the program.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where I ended up now.
Yeah.
And the way I divide the business is for one-on-one coaching, I do it with the authors through the program. In regards to career and life coaching, I'll go out and I'll do speaking engagements
Yeah.
because I feel that I can reach and hopefully inspire more people, at one event than I would be than just doing only coaching.
Right on. So what was the first audiobook you narrated?
It was my book, Lights Action You.
Okay. All right. Okay. I didn't know if it might have been another one. Yeah, I was just curious on the timeline there. Right on. So let me ask you this. I'm going to kind of tap a little bit into this journalistic side of you
Sure.
being in radio. If you could interview anybody in the world right now to get a glimpse into who they are, what would be a dream interview for you?
Wow. Um, I always think musicians,
Yeah, sure.
probably David Gilmour of Pink Floyd.
Yeah,
Um, you know, uh, geez, yeah, such a good question because, I would love to sit down with, and I'm glad I had the opportunity to talk to these other jazz artists
yeah,
because those are, were great people to speak with as well. Um, yeah, it probably would be again music related.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
God, there's
No, I
just
get
so
it. Yeah, I mean, like even Horace Silver. I mean, he passed in
yeah.
I think 2013, because
It was a few years ago. Yeah.
yeah. And they have so many great stories. And that's the thing. I've been doing this long enough now that it's hard because when they pass away, it's like you create these bonds, these relationships, and these kind of little mini portals into not only their world, but this kind of shared exchange of ideas and all of that. So it's wild, but.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm curious, what has been the motivator for you every day to get up to do this work that you do? Because you're helping people, but you also have to develop and evolve as a human being. What is that collective energy for you every day?
I would say the biggest motivator for me in regards to coaching authors and helping them create their audiobooks is hearing their story, having them tell their story, but seeing their growth in regards to confidence, in regards to, uh, you know, loving their voice. And that is something that I deal with a lot with the authors that go through the program is building their confidence because a lot of them, oh, I hate my voice. I don't
Yeah,
like how I sound. And it's like, well, you need to embrace this wonderful sound that comes out of your body because that's part of your author brand and that's what helps you stand out in the crowd. That's why you're unique. This is what makes you you. So love it and embrace it and have confidence in it because you sound fine. You don't
yeah,
sound as bad as you think you do. You really do sound fine. And when I'm coaching, I help them through that process, but then I put on the editor's hat. So and I when I go through editing, it's real time. I probably spend 50, 60, 70 hours per audiobook
wow,
because it deserves it. They
sure,
deserve to have the best. If I hear a mouth noise that I can remove, I'm going to cut it out.
yeah,
I want to make it sound great. So then when I do the final output of their mastered file, that's where I really get to listen and
yeah,
just enjoy it. And I tell you, Joe, every time I listen to somebody's audiobook, I get sucked into their story.
yeah,
And I'm like, wow, this is really great.
yeah,
And they did such a great job. And it's just a testament of the author, really, of them being confident enough and doing such a great delivery. I mean, there are times where I'm like when are you sending me the next chapter? I want to know what happens next
Yep.
because I don't want to read ahead. I
Yeah.
want to hear them tell the story.
Yeah.
That's really the reward, and that's the motivation from the audio book coaching aspect of it. Now, the career and life coaching, I mean, to be able to go out and speak to a group of people, and even if I inspire one person, it's all worth it.
Yeah.
That's just gratifying in itself. You know.
Yeah. Well, when you're an author, it's a big risk for you to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
You're giving your idea to the world, but also to take it another step further, when you actually have to read it and you don't like your voice, that's another risk. And my lead in here to my question is this. What's the biggest risk that you've taken in your career, professionally speaking? What was the thing that you did that you went in and you were unclear or it was difficult and it ended up being one of the best decisions you've ever made?
You know, I remember the day when I decided, like, am I going to do this coaching thing or not? And if I do it, I have to be all in, 100% all in. And there's no guarantee of success. There's no guarantees. It's I'm going to be an entrepreneur and I'm going to embrace it 100%. I remember the day when I made that decision
Yeah.
because when I was let go from 20th Century Fox, luckily part of the deal was I had a decent severance. So I had some money to live on while I figure out what I'm going to do with my life. And that, stepping into the unknown like that and taking that risk is like, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go for it and I'm going to make it work. I know entrepreneurship is not an easy profession or else everybody would do it. It's hard. It's
Yeah.
really hard. And there are, I mean, multiple days where you're just like, I want to throw in the towel. I'm done. I'm not going to do this.
Yeah.
But you don't. And resilience, tenacity, um, and belief that you can make this work and you just don't give up.
Yeah.
It's like that. What's the story about the guy who's drilling for gold and he's drilling and drilling and drilling and then he quits and he's like inches away from hitting the mother lode.
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing.
Yeah, for
you
sure.
just you just do it. You just got to do it, and you have to just be passionate about it. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
passionate about what I do. I'm passionate about music. I love jazz. I love rock. I love being a musician. I love audio editing. Some people think, "Oh my God, how can you do that? It's so tedious." It's like, yeah, but you know what? I see the creativeness in it,
Yeah.
and that's why I love doing it. And
Yeah.
plus, you're helping others. I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's a win-win.
It's amazing too when you deal with audio. Whenever I edit an interview, I'm thinking, I didn't hear that the first time. You know what I'm saying? And then you hear it again, and you're like,
Yeah.
wow, that was deep. You just, there's a level of repetition, there's a level of really honing in on what people say. I think that's why I enjoy the audiobook. So, my question to you, I got two questions. First question is this.
Sure.
Did you see Deadpool and Wolverine? Did you see that new movie?
I didn't see the new one. I saw the old one,
The
first one.
okay, so there's all these pot shots getting taken against Fox. Now I know why, because of the buyout. So watch it. You'll appreciate it. And I was going to ask you about that. So maybe we'll catch up another time about that. The other thing that I wanted to field too is there's with this advent of technology between audio and e-reads, everybody's like, well, you got to read a book to read a book, right? That whole old argument where you actually have to have pulp in your hands, you have to do it, and they're like, it's not really reading if you're listening. I don't agree. I mean, and probably because I enjoy listening to books and I'm getting it all. I've read a lot of books and I listen to a lot of books and it's just a different way of divulging. What's your philosophy, your theory on how you divulge a book?
All right. Well, I'm with you 100%. I do not agree with that mindset because it's not true.
Yeah.
It's not true. There were studies that have proven that of someone who reads a book versus somebody who listens to an audiobook, your comprehension level is the same. It doesn't change. You absorb the information the same way, whether you are doing it visually or whether you're doing it audibly.
Yeah.
The retention and comprehension level is the same. Those and studies have proven that. So if anybody ever says it, say no, well, that's not true.
Yeah.
But the other great thing is, well, okay, then get the audiobook and while you're listening to it, read along.
There you go. That's it.
There you go.
That's it. It's like whenever people are like, "Well, that's a faster way. This is a shortcut." You just got to drive it and figure out what the reality of it is, you know?
Right.
Um, so I got a question that probably would be applicable to people out there that have published a book, and there's a lot of self-publishing. I saw a stat the other day that was like there's like 13,000 new books that are published every day, something like that. Have you ever heard about that? Like how many a day come out?
I haven't heard about how many a day, but I've heard that there's probably like, 90% of people have a book in them or are writing a book or that they
Yeah.
just published a book. So it's a high percentage.
Yeah, there is a high percentage. So I have been a poet for my whole life, and I just finally got published. I got a local publisher in Kansas City, and doing it in audio isn't something that the publisher offers, but they're like, if you want to do it, you can do it. So let's say someone out there published their book and they want to push it and they want to get it on Amazon or Barnes and Noble, wherever you would distribute audiobooks or Audible. How would somebody go about doing that if they have a book published?
Okay, well, I got the audiobook coaching program right here,
Yes,
which would be a great way to do it. Now, I mean, not just to promote what I do,
right.
but the thing is, if you're going to do something, hire a coach. I mean, when I wrote my book, I hired a book coach
Yeah.
because I knew that there was somebody who can show me how to do this better than I would be able to do it on
Yeah.
my own and guide me through it so that I know that the book that I publish is going to be the best that I can possibly make it.
Yeah.
And, you put a team together. Like I hired an editor, a formatter, a cover designer, like all the pieces of the puzzle that you need to create your book because I know there are people out there who can do it better than I can.
Yeah.
And that's the way to do it because again, you're creating your author brand. This is your business. Another catchphrase I throw out all the time is you are the CEO of you.
Yeah.
The buck stops with you.
Yep.
So if you're going to make decisions that move your business forward and make good decisions because you don't want to cut corners, you don't want to skimp on quality, any of that. Same thing with an audiobook. There's a lot of moving parts in creating an audiobook. If you want to be published on Audible, Amazon, and Apple, you have to set up an account through the Amazon umbrella, which is ACX. And that alone can be overwhelming because there's a lot of things you need to do just to even set that up,
Yeah.
let alone the recording process and actually doing the narration and how to do it and how to be compelling and conversational and most importantly authentic.
Yeah.
So there's that aspect of it. And then even if you have your book recorded, you still have to hire an editor.
Yeah.
You have to have post-production audio done to your book or else it will get rejected.
Yeah.
I had a client who's written several books. He did a book before he worked with me, and he went to a studio, did the whole thing, uploaded it for publication in Audible, rejected.
Wow.
And so he had to go back and he spent several months trying to figure out how to fix his book so he wouldn't have to record the whole thing over again. You don't want that to
No,
happen.
no, you don't. You certainly don't.
No.
So, Robert, in your career of being in radio and entertainment with Fox and now being a coach and an entrepreneur on your own, when you look back on the arc of your career, what are you the proudest of?
Oh, you know, there are certain things like certain aspects of things that I decided to do and accomplish. And uh, so let's say in regards to the movie industry, I wrote and produced a film, a short film. It's about 25 or so minutes long. It was a psychological thriller to actually and asking my boss at Fox if I can go in on downtime into the fancy mixing bays so I can mix my movie, in 5.1 and do all this stuff,
Yeah.
you know, and to actually get it done and have a product. So I'm proud of that film. I'm also as a musician, I've released you know 2 albums. The first album I used in Europe of all places, rock world, which is really funny because it's not. I don't consider, but you know, just being able to do what I do as an audiobook coach and producer, these authors and then hearing their final product and seeing how proud they are with what they accomplished, because that's a huge accomplishment. And
Yeah.
that just makes me feel really good that I was able to be a part of helping others. That's
Yeah.
such a big deal.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, clients, everyone that sees you speak, everyone that you help, you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Well, Joe, I just try to live my life from a place of purpose, of value. Just to be a good person, like and honest. Honesty, integrity, authenticity. I just be who I am, and that's just how I'm wired. I don't believe in deceiving anybody or doing anything weird or that's just not who I am. So I just hope that people see me for who I am, that I truly care, and you know, this is who I am.
Yeah.
What was the thing I say? Like from a place of faith, love, and purposeful action.
Yeah.
And that's
Absolutely.
how I want to present myself.
I totally get it. So if anyone wants to hire you, reach out, learn more, get involved with the program, how do they do that?
Probably the easiest thing to do is just to go to robertlanecoaching.com.
Okay.
It's my website. Talks about the audiobook coaching program. The first step is to just schedule a call with me. There's a bunch of buttons there to say book a call. Goes to my calendar link. We'll talk about your book. I'll give you more details about your book's audiobook coaching program, and we'll get you enrolled. And you can have your book recorded, and narrated, and ready for publication by the end of the 6 week program. It's
Okay.
doable. It's
Yeah.
100% doable.
Right on. This has been wonderful, Robert. Thank you so much for your story. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Have a great holiday season.
Thank you, Joe. You too.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it.